Where do I get driver updates? Hey everyone, Leo Notenboom here for askleo.com. Question. I downloaded 3 separate check drivers programs. Each program identified 7 drivers as being outdated. However, my device manager says they're okay. It's been very difficult to find the drivers, and if they're outdated, I will have to purchase one of the driver programs. Do I need to update these drivers? And if so, how do I find the sites to download them? So to be clear, Device Manager will not tell you whether or not a device driver is out of date. That's not its job. What it tells you is if the device driver is installed and working at some basic level. Finding out whether your device drivers are out of date isn't simple, and neither is getting the updates. I'll review the options and describe what I do. Driver updates, when needed, are best supplied by Windows Update or directly from the computer or device manufacturer. Other device driver updating utilities shouldn't be trusted. In general, though, you don't need to update drivers outside of the automated mechanisms already in place unless you're experiencing a problem that you suspect is driver-related. Let's dive into it. A quick refresher. Windows is designed to work with all sorts of hardware, even hardware that might not exist yet. Windows programs use a fairly generic, although complex, interface that is not hardware specific. When you set up the machine or install new hardware, software is installed to translate those generic instructions into whatever the hardware on the machine requires. That low-level software that directly controls your hardware device is called a device driver, or just a driver for short. For example, your video card's driver knows how to translate the generic Windows instructions to draw a pixel here or change the resolution to this into the specific instructions required by the specific video card in your computer. Different video card, different driver, but Windows programs still do the same things in their same generic way. So, some key takeaways from that. Drivers are software. Drivers are specific to the hardware for which they're designed, and drivers, like any software, can have bugs and security vulnerabilities. That means that every so often, they need updates. The real question is, how do I know if there's a more up-to-date version of the device driver installed on my machine? If the drivers were installed with Windows itself, your answer is very simple. Windows Update will handle any updates for you. That's all most people need to do. If your drivers were not installed as part of Windows, and it can be hard to tell, things can get more complicated. In some cases, your hardware may come with additional software that checks for updated drivers as well. My video card does this, and I take those updates when they're offered. There are several third-party tools that may tell you, and I never, ever use them. I find most to be the classic, we'll tell you what's wrong for free, but if you want us to actually do something, it's going to cost you money. There's not really anything inherently wrong with that approach, I suppose, but it certainly rubs me the wrong way. And some are actual scams or very close to it. So I avoid the entire class of scanning tools falling into that model. I recommend that you avoid them as well. When it comes to drivers, not knowing if a driver is out of date honestly doesn't really bother me that much. I look for driver updates only when I'm trying to track down a problem with a specific driver or device. In other words, when it comes to device drivers, if things are working, I leave well enough alone. I realize this is at odds with a message that I and others harp on. Keep your system as up-to-date as possible. My rationale is this. The majority of drivers are already handled by Windows Update. While newer drivers are often available directly from the hardware manufacturers, issues dealing with security, really the only thing I care about if I'm not having other problems, are more than likely pushed through Windows Update quickly, and I don't have to do anything myself. Drivers not handled by Windows Update are so diverse that targeting any one of them for potential security vulnerability just isn't worth the hacker's time. Effort spent creating malware for a specific video driver, for example, targets only those people with that specific hardware. And even then, only if the driver is not also being updated by Windows Update. Historically, driver updates can be risky. Driver updates that come directly from the manufacturer often don't have the wide breadth of testing that ensures they'll work properly on all machines. Put it another way, updating drivers without reason can be kind of risky. Where do you find drivers? As I said, I do not recommend paying driver download utilities to do the work for you. Some may be legitimate and work, but in my opinion, it's too risky for a couple of reasons. They may not be legitimate or work, and you don't know where they're getting their drivers or if the drivers they provide are actually up to date. If you're going to go somewhere other than Windows Update for drivers, I recommend only one destination: the hardware manufacturer. Start with the computer manufacturer, especially if yours is a name brand computer. They often provide all the drivers on their support site. Others may point you at the component manufacturer's site, perhaps even directly to the page you need. If the computer manufacturer doesn't help with direct downloads or point you to the right component manufacturer, the process can get a little tedious. That's another reason I only recommend it when you're actually chasing down a problem with a specific piece of hardware. If that's not the case, then the best place to get driver updates is simple: nowhere at all. Bottom line here is that you should let Windows Update handle driver updates for you as much as is possible. If the hardware comes with additional software to enable features, that software may also check for driver updates, let it. If you're tracking down a hardware or driver-related problem, check with the computer's manufacturer, check with the specific hardware's manufacturer. Don't trust third-party driver update programs. For updates, for comments, for links related to this topic and more, visit askleo.com/4487. I'm Leo Notenboom, and this is askleo.com. Thanks for watching.